This is Midweek Politics with Dave Pakman.
Hey, we're back on Midweek Politics. Make sure to check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/midweekpolitics. Well, you may remember the man sitting to my right from a previous episode of Midweek Politics. Chris Manz is here. And a couple months ago, what was it? Was it a few weeks ago? Chris went out and we said, let's figure out what's going on with healthcare. Chris had some amendment ideas for what he wanted to push through. And he went out and talked to people. And it really went pretty well. He got signatures. Yep. It was funny. The downside was that we just didn't really hear from anybody he was talking to. We basically played a clip, and it was the way it was edited together at Chris's request, I guess, it was just all Chris. Is that right, Lewis?
There was a lot of Chris.
Right. So would you agree with that, Chris?
I think that part of it was, again, we want to move on to what we're dealing with this week, and I'm already kind of preoccupied with that. But a lot of people, they heard ideas. They didn't react immediately because they were new to them. They were processing them. So
this week we said, let's have Chris talk about what's going on with Sarah Palin. We're in a pretty liberal part of the country. Yeah. It'd be interesting to hear from people what their perception is of Sarah, right?
That's an interpretation of the assignment. But
well, you tell me then what the assignment is.
My idea was to create the definitive portrait of what Sarah Palin is, okay? And using democracy, since, that's the location, right, as the sort of foundation or tool for that. Now, things didn't actually go as democratically, even on our end. I think Lewis, knows a little bit about it, and you've heard, I guess, about what happened with Natan.
I caught wind. Natan is my brother for our audience. He's behind the scenes. He does the video editing. The idea, we're going to get to the clip in real short order. The idea was that this time we would see what people had to say. And instead, we got a shortened video clip, and it was still all Chris, though.
That's, again, I'm sure he's fed you this, and you've heard that since you guys are relatives and stuff like that.
But Lewis agrees, I think, right, Lewis?
I'm just curious as to what Chris concluded about Sarah Palin, really. I don't want to get involved in this whole
political debate.
First of all, I think an editor implies someone who creates cohesion out of something. In this case, he created chaos.
Let's take a listen, and if you're watching on TV, take a look at exactly what happened when Chris went to try to figure out what is Sarah Palin.
And believe me, I've asked all kinds of... Hey, how you guys doing?
What's up?
Hey, I work on a national radio program. It's called Democrastreet Wow, and it is truly, that's what it's called. Yeah. And I'm trying to figure out what is Sarah Palin. First of all, what do you think Sarah Palin is? Do you know what she is anymore? I mean, she's not like a politician. She's like working in TV. But in terms of what she is, and I mean like in the truest sense of the word, I don't know. And I have to figure this out for the package. It's like a big question mark for me. It's really hard to put your finger on it. I did a little bit of research before this. What is Sarah Palin?
Half horse, half monster.
I think she's a shameless self-promoter.
Are you familiar with the term succubus?
Political clown.
I saw it once in a book. I don't know what it means, though. Is she still like a problem in any way now, or is that past? Is she behind a real problem? Is she a real problem then, now that she's doing TV shows and stuff? Is she like even a problem now? So is she a problem then?
I don't see her as any type of viable politician at all.
I think she sets a bad example by writing the answers on her hands.
She has I feel like she has a lot of personal issues she needs to take care of before she comes back out into the public.
Oh, I agree with her children and all that kind of stuff.
I don't think that exemplifies the Republican value system.
Yeah, like raising her kids or whatever. How does she even have time for that? Oh. And believe me, I've asked all kinds of people today, and no one really knows what she really is. Because it's sort of reality. I don't know if it's reality.
Okay, so my biggest problem with this is this. To just hear you ask questions about Sarah Palin, you could do that in the studio. We barely heard from any other person.
Yeah, well, in my defense, first of all, we do have a time frame that we're trying to fill all this into. I mean, I think we all wish this piece could go on for half an hour.
Well, I don't think we do. I don't think we all wish that. I think maybe Chris wishes that. But the thing is, we just didn't hear from barely anybody else.
Well, you notice the evolution of the question that I was asking. I started with, what is Sarah Palin? Okay? And I didn't want people getting hung up on the different terms that people use, because everyone has their own language, their own way of sort of describing things.
Right.
And no one could give a direct answer. And so basically, the question then evolved into, is she some kind of problem? And that's partly because most of what I was receiving in this area, since people tend to have a critical view of Sarah Palin. We live in a progressive area, but that doesn't matter. It's representative, actually, of the majority of America as an unfavorable opinion. Let's not get hung up on that, all right?
I think we need to cut to the chase here.
Where?
What did you find out about Sarah Palin?
Well, I think Sarah Palin, right? She's a new archetype, okay? And she's not, and that question no longer really applies. I mean, she's someone.
So what you're telling us is the clip is outdated. We shouldn't even be airing the clip.
It shows the frame. It's sort of it's a reference to what. Okay, Sarah Palin, she could run a country potentially, in theory, or she could run a TV show. It really doesn't matter, right?
To who? Who? It matters to me. I'd much rather her run a TV show.
But the point is, in terms of listing her off, in terms of these descriptive characteristics, these traits or whatever, there isn't a precedence really of someone who, say, was an Alaskan governor. Did I say it wrong? How do you?
What's precedence?
Precedence. Precedence
okay.
is a word.
Yeah. All right, go on. Okay.
I think it is.
All right.
We're good.
I may have mispronounced it. But, to go from Alaskan governor to a Fox commentator to an author, I mean, yes, there's been presidents who've written their memoirs and things like that, but she is an entirely new creature altogether. And basically, again, I was using democracy, the interviewing of people, as the paints. And if you leave paint on a palette, it's going to dry up like raisins. You have to apply it.
Here's what I think we need to do. If we're going to do, my final word on this is, here's my thought.
Yes.
If we're going to do another Democrastreet Wow, we need to have the following restriction. The video clip, the audio clip, is only of the people you talk to. We don't hear Chris at all. That, I think, might help to refocus this in a way that might get it, because we're trying to talk to people on the street, but Chris is in the studio. We could just talk to him here.
Hold on. Is Sarah Palin a problem? Because that was your last question.
Let's take us out. Is Sarah Palin a problem?
Again, I want to describe what my role is, and I'm an objective commentator, okay?
It's incredible because you're the guy who's just asking the questions, but we only hear the questions.
I know, but and I can explain to you why I cannot answer that question. As an objective commentator, what I do is I find culturally, socially patterns that I find problematic, and then I pretend that they don't exist.
Well, I think the one thing you certainly did well was pretend the people you were talking to didn't exist because we didn't hear them. Chris Manz, Democrastreet Wow, thank you for coming in.
There was a couple.
You've been listening to Midweek Politics with Dave Pakman.
Midweek Politics is brought to you in part by Jackson & Connor, classically modern men's apparel in Northampton, Massachusetts on the second floor of Thorne's Marketplace. By DIF Design, specializing in custom business websites at difdesign.com. And by shentrition.com, provider of all-natural superfood and adaptogenic herbal blend at shentrition.com. To find out more about underwriting Midweek Politics, visit midweekpolitics.com.